Right. We are live. So, happy Monday, everybody. 6 p.m. Here's what we're going to do today. Quick review, plot our path forward. What have we done? It is hard to believe that we've done 4 of these on Monday so far. Phase 1, I'd say first month, basically is called the anatomy of a workout. So what we did is we took all of our variables that we include in all of our training, we spelled them out, we defined them, and we gave you guys the foundational language that we use for those. We then, on the second piece, took an example of an athlete or how I would train a certain athlete training for specific things and gave them a prescribed day, time. Disregard the trains over there, man. They're still rolling, even though most of the businesses are closed. Trains continue to roll. But what we did was we took that athlete, put them into a program, right? So we did an off-season program. We did 4 days a week training. We added some cardio and stuff like that to the other side. Then what we did is we spelled out exactly what that athlete should do. So we built a 4-day model. Now, what we want to do is we want to kind of reboot. Let's get back into the sciencey stuff because that's where I live. That's what I love. That's why I do this job. Let's lay our foundations, and then we will build a program out of that. You guys see the common theme here? You guys see how this is working? So again, we want to give you knowledge and information in a day and age where there ain't shit out there for information or there's just a bunch of misinformation. Let's clear things up a little bit and get really, really dialed in and focused and distilled down onto who we are, what we're doing, what our goals are, and map forward. Okay, so today is just the science of sports specific, or the science of sports. I said sports specific for a couple of reasons. Number one, I firmly do not believe in a developmental program that there's such a thing as sports specific, right? Sports specific implies that I'm doing something that's specific to soccer. I'm doing something that's specific to lacrosse. I'm doing something that's specific to name your sport. That doesn't truly exist, all right? Hate to bust your bubble. All you guys out there selling your sport-specific shit, stop. There's athletic development and there's athletic specific shit, all right? And that's where we live. So the first day, I want to explain what our energy systems are. So I wrote them out on the board. I don't know if you can see these or not. I always go back in and line item it into the description on our videos on our YouTube page. So it will live there forever, but it helps me think through and talk out loud. So it's more for me than it is for you. So step 1 of our second phase here is defining energy systems, all right? So from a physiological standpoint, athletes operate under 3 different energy systems. Not athletes, humans in general. So we have these 3 energy systems that we operate under, and we're going to define them out today and go through what each one is. So number 1 energy system is, I'm going to stand on this side. Maybe you can read it, maybe you can't. So energy system number 1, it's called ATP-PC. So it's adenosine triphosphate phosphocreatine. There'll be a test on this later, so you got to remember that. ATP-PC. This is kind of where the creatine monohydrate supplementation 20 years ago came from, right? So that kind of what you're doing is you're augmenting your stores of phosphocreatine and ATP so that it will allow you to do high repeated bouts of exercise at a higher intensity as you go through your workouts, right? So that's where creatine monohydrate came from. That's why we supplement with it, we use it. We're actually using it right now, so it's a good little supplement. I think it gets, I'm not here to sell supplements right now, but it's a good little supplement that is like really not recognized everywhere. Everybody's looking for the pre-workout shit, right? Like what's gonna get me amped up? I'll tell you what'll get you amped up. Sleep well and eat clean. That'll get you amped up. Have a cup of black coffee, right? Caffeine works just as fine as that pre-workout bullshit, so stop taking it. All right, I'm off my rant. So I've got the ATP-PC system, and this energy system only lasts for 0 to 10 seconds. So what lasts for 0 to 10 seconds, right? Those are high energy, high volition exercises. Sprinting a 40-yard dash, a maximal squat, a maximal vertical jump, Anything that's less than 10 seconds, right? So that's a pretty easy definition. But it's at a high threshold in intensity. So we cannot work 0 to 10 seconds at 40% volition, right? Because we're not maximizing or tapping into the phosphocreatine system at all. We're using it, but we're not extending it, right? We're not pushing the edges of how far can that system get me and how explosive and powerful can I be. So it's really important to exercise that system and to use that system specifically as it relates to whatever sport you're playing. We're going to get into sport energy systems in about 5 minutes, but I wanted to talk about energy systems first. So that's a big piece of the puzzle, right? So let's go with that premise. Our ATP PC system lasts for 0 to 10 seconds. Really high intensity, really short bursts of maximal effort energy. Now, what's next? It's our LA, it's called LaO2, so lactic acid oxidator. Try and say that 10 times fast. This system is an intermediate system, so you're still in the ATP PC system, but things are starting to run out, right? So you're working at a very high threshold. You've gone past 10 seconds. Anybody that has sprinted 400 meters knows exactly what I'm talking about. So you're past that 10-second threshold, but you're still working at 90% volition or higher. All of a sudden, you start to get this burn in your muscles and in your lungs and in your legs that is overwhelmingly telling you to stop, right? So that is the byproduct. That's lactic acid forming. And basically what's happening is your body cannot shuttle it away faster than your body is producing it, okay? So the better shape that I'm in, the higher my lactic acid threshold. That is important to be able to train in that threshold and to improve that threshold, specifically as it relates to high velocity, high volition sports that aren't cross country and that aren't endurance marathon runs, okay? So that gives you the ability to push the edge at a maximal rate. You're starting to turn over and get lactic acid into your system and into your body. It burns like hell and it sucks. It's a great feeling because you get the endorphins that way and you figure out your mental toughness on the other side, right? So I love training in that zone. We train in both. I primarily train in the first and the second phases. Rarely am I doing O2 training, which is next. So that's your 10 seconds and higher up to about 2 minutes. And that really is determined on how long, or let's say, your experience in your sport, your experience as an athlete, your age has a factor in that. So there's a lot of variables that go into the time during which you can work in that LaO2 system and then begin to shut down and just stop. So it is a high intensity, high threshold system. It's a bitch. I mean, there's no easy way around it. It is tough, but it's a great system to operate in because again, we're working at maximum intensity and we're trying to push the edges of how long we can do that. Okay, there's a point in time at which form breaks down too, and then you've got to realize that that's your time to stop. And if that's at 60 seconds, 70 seconds, that's where your threshold is. Stop and gear it down, recover, and reboot. So that's how we work on working through the lactic acid threshold, improving that turnover as it relates to your threshold, and improving your conditioning generally. So 2. The third piece is O2, so it's just oxidative. And that is a state where we get into burning equal amounts of glucose and free fatty acids for fuel. So I didn't state this, but in the first 0 to 2 minutes, you're using essentially glucose for fuel, blood sugar, right? So that's a primary source of fuel for your body, primary source of fuel, especially as it relates to high energy output, unless you're on a ketogenic diet or a zero carb diet, and then that is a whole nother tangent that we will go down. We will talk ketogenics and ketones and all that fun shit too, but not today. That's a whole nother tangent that I love to talk about, but let's talk about that next month. Right now, we're thinking about what are we using for fuel. So in that 0 to 2 minutes, it's primarily glucose. As you get beyond 2 minutes, your body starts to say, oh shit, this guy's in it for the long run. It looks like he's going to be doing some miles today. So you'll start burning more free fatty acids and body fat for fuel reserves. That depends a lot on your blood sugar levels, and all those things kind of mix together. Again, we're going to put that into June. We're not going to talk about that right now. But that O2 system uses O2 sources of fuel, right? So you've got your glucose, which is the kindling, and then you've got your free fatty acids and body fat, which is like the big logs that you put on the fire. They're slow burning and they burn for a long time. So this is anything that lasts longer than 2 minutes. Obviously, you can think of a lot of stuff that lasts longer than 2 minutes, right? So you're talking about mile runs, you're talking about 5Ks, you're talking about any kind of swimming, long distance, things like that. So those are your primary energy systems, 1, 2, and 3. So let's do a quick review. ATP PC is 0 to 10 seconds. Adenosine triphosphate, phosphocreatine, 0 to 10 seconds. You've got your lactic acid oxidative, which is LaO2, and that is 10 seconds, anywhere up to 2 minutes, depending on your conditioning and your experience and your background. And then your third piece is oxidative, which is primarily blood sugar, free fatty acids, and that is anything longer than 2 minutes. Now, why is this shit important? All right, good question. Glad you asked. It's important because it is going to determine how I condition, how I train, and how I work out for my sport. Now, I've written, don't know if you can see them, 4 sports on the board. And in these sports, there are pieces of these sports that you can basically distill down and say it's X% this, it's X% this, it's X% this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through those 4 sports today quickly and then talk about how that would look as it relates to my training and conditioning for that sport. So in basketball, and I'm quoting these off the top of my head, so if I'm a few percentages off, don't fault me, or please fix me and I'll fix it. Basketball. So here's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go, just to make this easy, I'm going to go system 1, system 2, and system 3. And then I'm going to put the percentages through that. So on basketball, I'm going to be 60, 20, 20. All right, so 60% of that sport lives in that 0 to 10 second range, right? 20% lives in the longer bouts, and then 20% lives in the oxidative. Now, remember, not that basketball you're playing nonstop for 2 minutes or more. It's a go, stop, stop, go type of sport, but you have to have this underlying level of oxidative aerobic conditioning that's applicable to basketball. Is it the primary source? No. ATP is the primary source. So specifically as it relates to basketball, I would want to put more of my training, more of at least what I organize for my athletes into that bucket. And teaching them how to get more out of that 0 to 10 seconds is hugely important to them being able to excel at that sport. And then as their competition level rises, they're going to be prepared for that, right? So I got a kid that can run up and down all day on the basketball court. That's great in the 6th grade, but we need to develop his vertical jump, his explosivity, his ability to do high intensity bouts repetitively. Then as his competition level gains, he's up for the competition, right? So running up and down is great, but if I don't have any explosiveness, if I don't have any lateral speed and agility, then basketball might not be my primary sport. So I'm looking at that as how would I athletically develop a kid from A to B to C to D. All right, so basketball, we got 60, 20, 20. Football, American football, you got to think, man, everything happens like in short bursts of energy, right? So this is like 95 and 0. So I'm looking at 95 and 0. So very little of football happens in the aerobic realm, if any. So again, why would I do my long distance training as a football player, right? If I want to be the best football player that I can be, why am I going to go out and run miles, right? So I'm not saying don't run, but it would be more beneficial for me to work. And again, we can be sport specific on this one as we want. Let's say I'm a left tackle. So on a left tackle, I'm going to work on my lateral mobility and hip mobility explosively as I can for those 0 to 5 second, 0 to 8 second bouts. I played tight end in college, so I'm going to work into a longer scale, but I'm thinking more linear. So I want to be able to get out and downfield. So I'm going to work on those accelerations, 10 to 20 yard accelerations, which again are short bursts of energy. But I'm going to do the
bulk of my training and specificity in that realm because that's where my sport lives. Soccer, this one, and I think for the most part, guys, I don't think, again, I'm not being hypercritical of soccer here, but I'm going to give soccer a little bit of shit. So on the soccer realm, it's 50, 20, 30. So 50% of that sport is spent in that 0 to 10 second range. 20% is spent in the 10 second to 2 minute range, and then 30% is anaerobic. Now, again, this is highly dependent on position, so we can be as specific as you want, dependent on position, and we can have that conversation at a later date. If I'm working with a soccer player, we will have that conversation, right? Goalies are going to be different than most everybody else on the field, and that's fine. Goalies are going to live in that 95 to 100% ATP PC system, right? So goalies are going to be very similar to football as it relates to their energy systems. So you got to think strategically about that stuff, but here's my question, right? So I've got 50% of that sport lives in that ATP PC system. The more that I spend in that aerobic system, the less that I get out of my 0 to 10 seconds. So I've always got to keep that in the back of my brain when I'm developing programming, strength and conditioning. So this is not just the lifting weights component, right? This is the conditioning component. This is the mobility component. This is how all of these pieces fit together. So I wish that it was just one variable, but you've got to take into account these 20 to 30 different variables that we got to put into every single program that we build. So that's why it is important that I know, and if you play multiple sports, like we can cross that bridge when we get there, right? So I'm more thinking about preparatory work. What would I do if I'm coming into my season in September? So that's a big, right now, it's middle May. If you are getting ready for September, you should be doing that right now, right? You've got to at least be starting to think, here is my plan. I'm working through it, and I'm going to start to up my conditioning and my intensity as we get into June and July. And you've got to be full tilt hauling ass into August so that you can take a little bit of downtime and prep for your season. I'll get off my soapbox, but again, I think about those things from a preparatory standpoint. Volleyball. Volleyball is 80, 15, and 5. So again, a lot of that sport lives in that high-end ATP phosphocreatine system that is so coveted, and it needs to be developed, and it takes time. So 80, 15, 5, as it relates to volleyball, that is a lot of anaerobic power that needs to be produced in that sport. It is a hugely competitive sport. It is a hugely vertical jump-oriented sport, and a hugely lateral movement to vertical jump kind of sport. So it's a very, very complex sport that takes a hell of a lot of practice, timing, and training to get better at it, right? So let alone without a volleyball, I'm thinking about just the movement patterns of the sport are very, very challenging. So from my standpoint, that's why I want to be able to dial in and focus on those exercises that fit into their sports-specific energy system. So hopefully it all came full circle for you on that one, and that's pretty much where I wanted to end this first day, right? So we've got our sports-specific energy systems. We've built that. And so we've done that by defining our energy systems. We've done that by defining the sports that operate under those energy systems. And next week, what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 sports, right? So we're going to go with football, and we're going to go with volleyball next week. And the following week, we'll do soccer and basketball. And so we'll take those 2 sports. We are going to design and implement a specific conditioning program for that sport. And we'll spell out all the details, man. So if you're watching, just copy this shit down and go do it. I want to think one caveat as well. So a lot of the stuff that we're doing, I'm trying to imagine what you might have, right? I'd say for the most part, we've got our body weight and outdoors and stairs and maybe a few other things. So I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. I realize in the gym, we've got sleds and ropes and landmines and you name it, med balls. We got a ton of stuff that we could use as toys to augment what we're doing in this system. What I'm trying to do is put together a body weight specific program for now.
at least until we can open up our doors again and start bringing you guys back in-house, and hopefully more back in-house. But that's the whole gist. So let's go with that. If you guys have any questions, it's going to be on Instagram for a while. It's going to be on our stories. Our main hub is over on YouTube, so go like our page on YouTube, subscribe. All of our videos are over there. They're all housed over there, and then you'll have plans, workouts, videos, you name it. We've got hundreds, probably approaching close to 1,000 videos over there right now, so go check them out. Outside of that, that's all I got, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you learned something today. If I didn't answer your questions here online, I will, and I'll incorporate those next week, or DM me, or get a hold of me offline. You guys know where to find me. Guys, thank you for your time. Hope all is well. Hope you had a good Monday. I'll see you Thursday.